Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are all doing great today. It is kind of cloudy today and very humid today, but thankfully right now as I'm filming this, it's not super hot, but it is a little bit humid. So anyways, I digress. Today, I wanted to talk all about petunias and how you can be successful with them and enjoy their beautiful blooms all summer long. So I'm sure for those of you who are more experienced gardeners, I'm sure you are all very familiar with petunias. They are an easy to grow, very colorful annual. They come in so many different colors, habits, sizes, and all that good stuff. So these ones actually that I'm showing you right now, these are actually wave petunias. So these are more of a spreading type. So they'll really spread out and I really love that. But their care is more or less the same that you would find with other petunias. So it's really not much different. So just kind of lump them all in. So I also have super petunias I want to show you too. But anyways, I want to show you some of the petunias I have blooming and talk a little bit about how you can care for them and be successful with them. So again, petunias, I don't know if I already said it, but they're super easy to grow. They really are not fussy at all. They are really probably one of the easiest annual flowers you'll grow. So yeah, I just want to talk about their care and just show you some that are blooming right now. So first and foremost, if you are buying petunias at the beginning of the season, regardless of which type, wave, super, or the standard kind of petunia, you do want to wait until all danger of frost is past. They don't really like the frost, and they really will probably die if they are exposed to really heavy frost. They can probably handle a light frost, but probably not a hard one. However, I have seen them handle pretty low temperatures, but probably not lower than I would say about 25 or so. They probably will look pretty scraggly, and they won't like that, especially not at the beginning of the season. In the fall, especially if you have kind of a gradual cool down, they may make it through maybe one or two good frosts, obviously depending on how hard it is. I'd say if it's below 26 or maybe even below 28 or so, they probably won't survive. They might if you're lucky and they're more sheltered, but I wouldn't risk it, especially at the beginning of the season. So whenever you're buying petunias, make sure it is after your last frost date. They don't really like the cold, and they won't really get going until it warms up. So make sure they are that you get them after all danger of frost. Now, as for sunlight, petunias really do appreciate full sun. They love lots and lots of sunlight. They need at least 6 hours or more of direct sunlight every day. If you can give them more than that, they would do even better. So make sure that you give them lots and lots of sun. If you have them in more part sun, they will probably not bloom well. However, they might still survive. But if possible, I would give them at least 6 hours. Definitely no less than 4, but 6 hours or more is preferable. Now, as for soil, they really do like more loamy and rich soil. They don't really care for heavy clay, so I wouldn't put them in really heavy clay soils. I would make sure to amend them if you do have clay soils before you plant them. They really do not appreciate really heavy clay, and they really need good drainage. That is very important for petunias. These guys do not like wet feet. They will rot and die if they are sitting in wet feet. So please do not put them in a spot where water pools, at least not for very long, and they should be good. And I would say it's a good idea to put some organic matter into their soil. They do like it a little bit more rich, especially if you're growing the spreading types like what I'm growing, like these waves, and later the super Petunias that I'll show you. But those ones especially, make sure you add some good organic matter, and again, make sure the soil is well draining, that it is not pooling, at least not for a couple of hours after a really heavy rain. That is very, very important. Please, please don't do it. Like, they really do need good drainage. So, I know I probably said that like 5 or 6 times, but they really do need good drainage, and probably 7 times. So that's soil. As for watering, pretty standard. There's nothing really special about their watering. So they really only need about 1 inch of water per week. So that generally is like one really good soaking. So I have like a watering wand, and you can just soak them really well. I'll even go to other plants, like I'll water this and then I'll come back to it, go over it again, and I'll do that a few times. So it does take a little bit longer than you'd think, but if you do it really well, they really shouldn't need to be watered more than once a week. If you live in a really hot and dry climate, at least if they're in the ground, if they're in containers, you may need to water them more often. So definitely check on them, those ones, a little bit more often than you would the ones in the ground. So yeah, really just one really good soaking, like once a week. And again, if it's dry, if you live in more of a drier climate, I live in a more humid climate, and we do generally get fairly consistent rain. So if we don't have a lot of rain, I can just give them a good soaking once a week, and they'll typically do fine. So just make sure they get good water. And they can, however, if you're not able to get around to it, they can probably go a little bit longer than you might think without water. They actually are somewhat drought tolerant. Once they are all rooted in and they really start growing, they can actually handle short droughts. I would not let them be subjected to really long droughts. Like if you have like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and you don't really have much rain, I would definitely give them a really good drink. But again, they can handle maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks, depending on your climate. Again, if you're hotter and drier, that will be less. If it's cooler and more humid, definitely longer. So again, just check on them, check their soil. If it looks dry, give them a shot of water. Now, as for fertilizing, this is one of the most important things to remember, especially about wave petunias and super petunias. In fact, let's show you the super petunias. So these ones right here, these are super petunias. I believe this is Super Petunia Vista Bubblegum. This is Super Petunia Royal Velvet. So pretty. But anyways, sorry, I digress. They really do need to be fertilized often. Make sure that you are feeding petunias on a very regular basis. When I planted these, as well as those ones in that hanging basket I was just showing you, I put slow release fertilizer into the soil. And the nice thing about that is it will last longer. So you don't really have to feed them quite as often. You can maybe a few times throughout the year, maybe like once a month or so. I don't know if I'll do it, but I guess you could give them, additionally, you could give them kind of a supplemental feed like once a month or so. Especially in containers, you probably have to do that maybe every 2 weeks or so, depending on how often you're watering. But they really do need consistent feeding. If you have the fertilizer I use said that they should be good for like 4 months. And I actually planted these only about a month ago. So I planted them a little bit later than usual. I actually had tulips in here. I did a tour on my tulips. I'll flash that thumbnail up on the screen in case you're interested. But this is actually the same place I had my tulips. But anyways, so yeah, I put So they should be good, but I might give them a round of like more fast release fertilizer, maybe a few times during the season, especially close to the end, so they can continue, gives them a little bit of a boost. So that's kind of feeding. Now, as for pruning and other maintenance, they don't really require too much. Like, so you shouldn't really have to stress with them. But especially if you're growing more of the standard petunias, like not the waves or super petunias, but if you're growing the standard petunias, you can do it with waves as well. It's a good idea to deadhead. So I did actually want to emphasize this a little bit because this is a common mistake I see. When people deadhead their petunias, they'll typically just remove the spent bloom like that. Now, that really only improves its appearance, but this thing right here, this little nodule, this is actually a seed pod. So this will actually, I don't know if I can get it into focus. I don't know if you can see that. There's a teeny little green thing. That's the very beginnings of a seed pod. We don't want that. So what you want to do, this is another spent one, is you want to take the stem all the way down to where it meets the stem. Use your finger, or you can like use scissors or something and just snip it off. They're really pretty easy to move with your fingers. So, but I did want to kind of emphasize, and it is a good idea, especially with the more standard types, to remove their spent blooms so they continue putting energy into new blooms. Now, as far as the waves and more spreading types are concerned, they don't really need it. Wave petunias, they will respond positively if you can do it every once in a while. But because they produce so many blooms, it's not strictly necessary. And with super petunias, like these ones, let's show these again. Like these ones are really nice because you do not have to pinch off the little pods like these. I'm just showing you as an example. You don't have to do that on these super petunias because these actually do not produce seeds at all. So, and they will just continue putting energy into their buds and into their blooms. And these are really probably the most low maintenance petunia you'll ever grow. So, but they really don't need to be deadheaded. Like I said, like these waves, for instance, you can do it, but it's not strictly necessary. Any other types, it's probably a good idea to remove them. Maybe once a week if you can pinch off the dead flowers or so. They'd probably really appreciate it. Now, as for pests and diseases, petunias are not really susceptible to pests and diseases. Like again, they're really not fussy plants. However, at least with the waves and more of the older types of petunias, sometimes I can get aphids, especially if they're really stressed out. They can be susceptible to aphids. They're like these little green insects. They'll like to hide like on the undersides of the leaves, and you'll see them everywhere if the infestation gets really bad. So I would definitely keep an eye out for those. And you'll know it's really bad is if they really slow down. Like maybe a few aphids wouldn't hurt them, but if they're really infested, they will struggle to bloom well. So you really need to make sure that you get them at the first sign of any infestation. So you can use your hose every so often and kind of spray them off. If you can spray the undersides, that's better. Alternatively, you can use like an insecticidal soap or something to clean them up. So yeah, they can sometimes get aphids. So I would just keep an eye out and deal with them accordingly if you spot them. And it is important to spot them early because they can really multiply and get out of control. So you do want to kind of be on top of that. So yeah, that's kind of, and as for diseases, again, as long as you're not overwatering them, they really don't deal with diseases. They can get root rot if you water them too often. So if the soil is still moist or you just watered them recently, I wouldn't water them. Like I said, they are a little bit drought tolerant, so don't get too crazy with the watering can. But But they do like, again, to be watered probably once a week, especially if it's dry. But if you water them too often, you'll start to see yellowing leaves, and the whole plant will probably collapse if they get, sorry, motorcycle just went by. They'll probably collapse if they get root rot and die. So we don't want that. So yeah, that's kind of the diseases. So I think that's pretty much it. Oh, one more thing I did actually want to mention before I show you, kind of go on like a little walk around with some of my petunias. They do sometimes around mid-season, regardless of which ones you're growing, and this will probably be more evident in like a hanging basket or container situation. They can get a little bit lanky, even if you have like perfect conditions. Even if they're well cared for, they can get a little lanky. Like, for example, like say like this stem, it doesn't look like that right now, but say it's like really long and there's only blooms on like the very end. You can kind of just snip that back and like give them like a little bit of a haircut. If you can give them like a haircut, if they're looking lanky, don't be afraid to give them a haircut. They will rebound and they will look so much better if you can do that. And they really, really appreciate it. And they will look so much fuller and so much more beautiful if you can do that. So yeah, that's a little tip to keep them. Another tip to keep them going is don't be afraid to prune them if you feel like they need it. Like they're looking, especially if you have a hanging basket, like if they're really trailing down the sides and they look kind of empty in between, just snip them up and they should rebound within no time. They're very fast growers and they will really be back within no time at all. So that's kind of it on the kind of the care of petunias. And some of these petunias I have growing along my sidewalk, like these, again, like these were right where my tulips were, but they have since been dug up. So yeah, these are some of the petunias out here. And I do want to show you some more on the island and a few more in the back. So here's some pretty red waves. So these ones, again, they do look pretty small because they were planted a little bit later, but this kind of goes with my color scheme in this garden. Like these are more hot colors. I have more like oranges and yellows and things like that. So I think reds are a really good combination here. Like, aren't they so pretty? I love them. So yeah, just the standard red waves. Same basic concept, just different colors. They're just fabulous plants. They're not fussy and they give you so much in return. There's some petunias that I have growing in this pot. And I did actually want to say, if you really are struggling to get your soil right, they actually do really well in containers. Again, make sure they have a drainage hole and all that good stuff. But they do just as good, maybe even slightly better in containers. I think they just do. They're so fabulous. There's really so much to love about petunias. So yeah, these are just the same pink and purple ones I was showing you earlier for most of the video. That, yeah, they're just the same ones. I just put them in a pot and they do really nicely. So this is the last one I wanted to show you. This is another one of those super petunias I was mentioning, like the ones that don't need deadheading or anything like that. So, but this one I believe is Supertunia Vista Paradise. Kind of like the little blooms. I think they look kind of cute. But, so this is another one of those, and I do have more, but I think you kind of get the point. Again, like I keep saying, they're easy, they're wonderful. Like, if you haven't tried petunias, you really should give them a try. They really are not fussy, and I think they're a great flower, especially if you're a beginner and you just want something that's really rewarding and it'll give you color all season. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative and you enjoyed seeing some of these beautiful petunias. And if you enjoyed this video and found it informative, you could leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. You could share it with all your friends who feel like they could use little bit of care information on petunias. And I will see you guys in the next video very soon. Thanks for watching.